Hello and welcome back. My name is Bobby Parker with Beyond Clean, and you are tuned into the global conference Be Prepared, No Instrument Left Behind. Thank you for sticking with us and joining us for today's presentation. Before we get started, I want to orient you to the screen that you're looking at. You'll see some downloadable resources from our event sponsor, Aesculap, from today. You can find some brochures of their offerings there, as well as information on Beyond Clean and our big CE library, the world's largest free CE library for sterile processing. So please check that out. And feel free to explore our LinkedIn pages and follow us, follow Aesculap as well on Beyond Clean. Today's panel is called New, Used, or Needs to Go. It's about teaching techs how to draw the line on instrument repairs. And so it'll be a panel discussion today hosted by our very own Hank Balch, whom you're probably familiar with. He's co-founder and president of Beyond Clean, is a well-known industry writer and social media connoisseur, and is just on a mission to equip some sterile processing professionals. And he enjoys the collaborative approach to problem solving. He wants them to have the skills to fight dirty every instrument every time. And he's going to be interviewing Ken Paciullo, a 30-year veteran in the surgical services industry and brings a lot of passion to his work, as well as Jameed Billingsley. Jameed's managing director of Advantage Support Services, a nationally recognized speaker, and is a surgical inventory management expert. And the discussion today, again, is going to be about how to draw the line on instrument repair. So if you're anything like me, there's nothing better than seeing a set of shiny new instruments rolling out of the washer for the first time. But it begs the question, how long are they going to last? And so today, Hank's going to be interviewing this panel of experts to draw the line on that instrument quality, to lead us in a discussion of what is and is not acceptable in the life cycle of surgical instruments. So get ready to hear some practical tips on your department's navigation of complex decisions and around determining the end of useful life for your surgical instruments. So join me in welcoming in our panel.
All right, thanks. And yeah, welcome to the session, New, Used, or Needs to Go. And in this session, we're going to be talking about the practical challenges that our technicians face in the assembly area, sometimes in decontam, sometimes elsewhere kind of around. You may see something in a pill pack that you got questions about, all tied, of course, to the theme of this conference, which is instrument quality in repair and workflow. And we've got an all-star panel put together for you today. Some of my favorite people in the industry. As you heard a couple of intros already here, but I want to let each of these guys introduce themselves a little bit more. And, you know, if you've got any part of the repair process that you nerd out about, it may not be this topic, but I'm kind of curious. Let's start with you, Ken. And if you just give us a little bit of background, tell folks where you're from. And then, yeah, if you've got a particular part of repair that you just can't get enough of, let us know that too.
Yeah, great. Ken Paciullo, and thanks, Hank, for having me. Appreciate it. I'm down in Orlando, Florida. Have been a registered nurse now for almost 30 years, and my entire professional life I've been in the operating room, with the last 10 years or so in the SPD arena. And I came as a novice. I still consider myself a bit of a novice. My team really are the experts, but they've taught me a lot, and I'm hoping to kind of pass some of that on today as we chat.
Anything about repair that kind of nerds out?
Absolutely. You know, it's my favorite thing. Actually, I've got a garage that's a house full of tools, and so I get really involved with, you know, how things go together and how to take them apart. And you know, I'm into the nitty-gritty and borescopes and, you know, magnifiers and seeing what you can't usually see. So, yeah, really cool stuff.
I knew I had you on this panel for a reason. All right, let's throw it over to Jameed. Introduce yourself a little bit, and then, yeah, if you've got an area of repair that you nerd out on, kind of let us know about that, too.
Thanks, Hank. My name is Jameet Billings. I'm the Managing Director of Surgical Services for Advanced Support Services. I'm a Navy-trained surgical technologist, so started in the OR, and we do both OR and SPD. I became a first assistant, so I'm very familiar with how instruments are used. And then I become kind of very involved in the world of sterile processing, even though we still do both. So, and the part that I nerd out about is from a management perspective, managing your repair program, right? Because it's mathematically impossible to do the all instruments matters thing. And if anybody wants to fight me about that, I have the numbers that'll show you. So this idea that we're gonna service all the trays in the house once a year or once a month or whatever pretend number you want to put there, a lot of times that cripples us. And so I like to help people realize, let's focus on the instruments that really need the focus. And you may not be able to touch some of your other trays as often as you would like to be able to say that you touch your other
love
trays.
that.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, you and Justin Poulin, I think, are in the same crowd because he's always talking about that, usage-based versus time-based repairs. You're kind of getting into that question. So
Yes.
yeah, if we have time, we might get into that. I think there's kind of a tie-in potentially in this outline today. But let me throw it back over to you first, Jameet, because I want to start on the training piece. Of course, the subtitle to this session is Teaching Techs How to Draw the Line on Instrument Repair. And I just want to kind of get some insight on how y'all were trained. I feel like that's a good place to start, and then we'll talk about the nuances and how it should be done, maybe differently today than the way you were done, or if you really enjoyed your training, we'll kind of go out from there. But because you mentioned that you were trained in the military, that's always an interesting conversation around how these things kind of play out. So yeah, what did that look like in terms of instrument quality in particular? How did that training experience go for you as a new tech in the OR and then kind of coming down to the SPD side as well?
So I'll say, if we're being transparent, all the focus is on learning the instruments, right? It's very little focus on being able to critique the instruments and function test them. That really came to me later in my career because it was like, first learn all the instruments. And we didn't learn a lot about how to judge the instruments as we prepared them. And so it becomes a reactive kind of training. Okay, we're having a lot of problems with these instruments. This is how you test them. So I think because of podcasts and the industry being kind of multi-platforms for training, I think now newer techs have the advantage of learning that there is an actual repair and maintenance side of it. Because I don't know about Ken, but that wasn't a focus of what we did. And we didn't have function testing equipment anyway. So, some of the stuff, some defects can be found in the, so those two things go hand in hand. You can look at instruments under magnified light, but if you don't function test them, you're going to miss some defects as well. So that wasn't a part of my training, if I'm being transparent.
That's good. Yeah. We're going to get into that piece a lot on the function testing. But yeah, Ken, was that your experience, or you kind of go a different route as you came from the OR into SPD, so kind of speak to that nuance.
Sure, right. And I've never been a technician, really. So coming from the OR, we kind of take for granted that our sets were going to work correctly as expected. Never did give it much thought as to how we keep them there. And it was clear when I started in our SPD here that really wasn't a primary consideration of what we were doing either. They were just trying to crunch out trays and get them upstairs as quickly as possible in a very busy OR. So that was one of the things we set out to work on right out the gate. And absolutely, I shared the same experience where as learning the instruments became a priority, but function testing was something that we got into a little bit later on, because how do you know it works unless you're able to test it? It's also something that I've been able to then share with surgeons when they say, hey, this scissor isn't working. I can bring the function test to them and show them, test it. And, it's amazing, 9 times out of 10 when they tell me that, it doesn't pass the function test. So it just, I believe in transparency, and I thank them for their input on it. And I tell them, that we're going to go talk about it downstairs. So we do have some good testing parameters now that we can follow, and if we follow them, they work.
I really love that theme that both of y'all brought out, that it can't just be about instrument identification. And it's, interesting coming from me, because I'm in the middle of this big video series we've been doing all year specific to instrument identification. But in the videos, if anyone's got a chance to watch them, it's called Hello, My Name Is. And we're going through all these independent instruments. But if you watch the videos closely, at the same time I'm saying, this is how you identify what it is. Every single video is also, and this is how you identify any issues around functionality and any areas around cleanliness as well. So in kind of coming to that, and I want to throw this back to Ken first, in training our technicians, if we know at large the industry is primarily focused and sometimes exclusively focused at the beginning on just that ID piece, what is it? How do we break that model down, build in an expectation of, you need to know what it is, because if you don't know what it is, you're not going to know how it functions. You're not going to know how it is supposed to take apart. So that's critical, but that's not enough. So how do we start that process? If you were to build a new training program from the very beginning, where would you start in that?
Well, that's a big question. I think, one of the very first things that you do is you get your technicians up into the ORs to see the instruments while they're being used and how they're being used. It's one thing to talk about insulation testing, but then understanding the proximity of a stray current to other tissues and seeing it arc off in real time if it's not correctly done. Being able to see a self-retaining retractor actually retracting, tissues and sterile fields, I think goes a long way, because we kind of take for granted that our technicians know how these instruments are being used. My experience has been that nothing could be further from the truth. Transversely, my technicians know the correct name of every instrument, where the ORs are, calling it, what we've always called it for years and years. So, I mean, there's kind of an empathy that we develop there by learning each other's side of the coin, if you will. But I think at first place is understanding how they're used, and then go from there. I think, one of the biggest things that we have now that we can see better than we used to be able to with borescopes and with magnification and microscopes is all of a sudden you can see all these, micro scratches and cracks. And how do you know what is within spec and what is a problem? That's what we're kind of going through right now with some of this new tech. We can really see, so is it okay or isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I want to get into here in a moment. So you're setting us up perfect, because you're right. We can see more than what we've ever seen before, and our training is getting better. Like your point about the, getting our technicians into the operating room. Over the last 10 years, that conversation has been getting more and more and more steam. So it used to be very uncommon to hear that. Now lots of leaders, lots of educators are like, I'm building that into my curriculum from day one. We know no one's leaving orientation until they're in the OR to actually see these things. But what's striking is, you were talking about that, I was thinking about my own career, and I viewed a lot of cases in my career, but I haven't seen every instrument in every scenario being used. So there's a large percentage of my instrument knowledge that I can tell you what it is. I can tell you how to clean it, how to take it apart. I still would fail a test to tell you how it was used. So I'm just being honest. So yeah, there's a huge gap in opportunity, to your point there. What about you, Jameed? So OR piece, like Ken said, very important. If you know how it's used, you can kind of reverse engineer into the functionality piece, into the cleaning piece? What else would you kind of start at the ground level in building a program that lets these technicians connect beyond just this is what the instrument is called?
So, piggybacking off Ken, first of all, stole all the great ideas. But it's funny having the privilege to go in hospitals all over the country and do audits. The first thing that we need to do is have the function testing stuff at each workstation. Like, we have function testing stuff, but is it at every workstation? If you're the supervisor or team lead on the floor, I can tell you, and I know a lot of people listen to Beyond Clean while they're at work. Turn around where you are and see how many magnified lights are on, right? So a lot of times the magnified lights are decoration. You have the magnified lights. You're doing a neuro tray, but you don't have
it's not
on.
Christmas, right?
So,
like, we don't get those lights because they're like Christmas lights over here to decorate.
It's true. And so do we as leaders or as facilities have all the other function testing stuff? Do we have dowels? Do we have leather for arthroscopic punches? And so when you start seeing those things missing, and more importantly, when you look at Amy and you're looking for the requirement for these function testing devices, don't waste your time because it's not in there. So it's time for, it's almost time for a revision to ST79. And so getting that kind of information in there to help us better do it, because if you use function testing, you're going to find defects. And if you use the magnified light, you're going to find defects. If you have a borescope, but you don't use it, we go in places, guys have a borescope, yeah, it's somewhere over there, dusty in the corner. If you're doing lap trays all the time and you have one lap tester, well, I know you're not using it, because if you process 25 lap trays a day, it wouldn't be dust on the insulation testing. And so on that count sheet, do you have an attestation that I function tested these items, that I insulation tested the lap stuff? So all that goes together with Ken's suggestions of going up to the OR. But that, to me, that function testing, being present, and those of us who are privileged to be leaders of our team, making sure that we're accountable to say, hey guys, these magnified lights are for use. Hey, I saw you do a tray that had some cannulated items and you didn't use the borescope. So those are the kind of things that will help us develop and move and make that a part of our everyday life, right? The more we normalize that function testing is just as important as getting the trays up really fast, that you'll find that your more productive technicians, they actually are the best function testers as well. So that's what I've found, and I think that will help us. And if you have that stuff, it becomes ingrained in the training, in the everyday usage, and you start catching more instrument problems.
I know you said Ken had all the good ideas, but there's some pretty good ideas right there too. And even the piece on that auditing piece that you mentioned, we're in a lot of hospitals too these days, and it's really shocking in some sense, but now, I've seen it enough, I'm no longer surprised to see how many of those devices, like those borescopes, they're not cheap many times. You're talking, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, depending on what kind of borescopes you got. And then to see them in the corner in a cabinet, and then to your other point, tied to volume, you may need more than one borescope. You definitely probably need more than one lab tester. And then you start getting into all these devices and saying, like, how are you purchasing them? Is it just to have like a little toy over there to use occasionally? Or are we getting down to the real nitty gritty of, like you said, hardwiring this inspection into the expected process? And this goes back, Ken, kind of to the sterile processing leaders and managers like yourself, who you set the expectation in terms of productivity. Everybody knows, hey, we got some targets. We need to get this amount of, production through because we've got cases that are scheduled for tomorrow, for instance. But you're also responsible to set the expectation for quality and to provide those tools like what Jamit's talking about. I want to go And then, Ken, kind of just something else that Jimmy mentioned and kind of get your insight on it too. It goes to the accountability piece. And I had never heard this prior to a talk that I heard from Stephen Kovac from HealthMark a number of years ago. But it was about that attestation that I inspected the laparoscopic installation, and I'm going to put my name to it, that I did that. In your experience, Ken, are we at that level as an industry yet that folks are doing that, or that we have the technology to do that? Is staff bought in to the importance of that, or do we still have a ways to go?
I think we still have some improvements to make. At our facility, we have the ability to build that into our tray list. I added an indicator line a long time ago because it wasn't part of the tray list. And I can tell you that every single tray that I get called for that's missing an indicator has that line checked. It's kind of like, retained sponges in a patient. The counts were always correct. So,
right.
I think it's easy for technicians to check something quickly. I also use my tracking program as a methodology for making group announcements that require the technician to acknowledge that they received the announcement. Yet there's so many that would tell you that they never saw it, but they did check it off. So, I think, Hank, and you and I have talked about this offline before. There's definitely there is a little disconnect, at least in my experience, between having all the great ideas, implementing those great ideas, but then the follow through and the audits to make sure that these things are actually being done. Right. I've spent a ton on borescopes. I have a borescope. We use ours in decontam to verify the cleaning process before they even hit the sink. Every single one of my decontam sinks, and I have about 13 of them, have a borescope on them. That's over 4 different locations. Every single assembly table has a testing, installation tester. They all have the scissor testers, and they all have the magnifiers. But I can tell you, my experience has also been, you walk through and they're kind of up there in the corner. The lights are off, and I'm asking, so how did you verify this or that? If your magnifier's not down, and they immediately grab it, turn it on, pull it down, and say, "Here we go." So I think there's a big we're missing some opportunities on the backside of all these great processes that we're building by not taking a step further, and then knowing that the audits are going to be in perpetuity, because as we learn new things and as we develop new policies, we always need to just to verify they're happening, and we're going to learn more about whether they're good policies by checking those out as well. That's just been my experience here.
Yeah, you are speaking for the masses. I will guarantee you that, because it is. It's not easy to create these tools and these technologies, right? Like the borescopes and like all the innovations around all these things. That's a lot of hard work that manufacturers and innovators have put in, and it's hard work to get them in your department, right? To get justification for borescopes these days. So, like, all that work is very difficult. But importantly, and I want folks, tuning in to take this away, like, in some sense, that's almost still the easy part. Getting it in, stocking the stations. Yeah, that's almost the easy part. It's what you described, that you need leaders, you need lead techs, you need supervisors, you even need other technicians to hold each other accountable. Yes. Because, the manager may not see that testing isn't happening all the time, but as a technician on the floor, what's going on. And if you're the only one testing and you're looking around and you're like, nobody else is testing, well, what do you do in that scenario? And I wrote, maybe 2 years ago, I wrote an article called "You Are Your Brother's Keeper," and it was about this, because people like to kind of get into the zone and say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm going to do it right. I'm committed to quality. I was trained and I'm gonna do it the right way, but I'm just gonna like put blinders on. And I'm not gonna pay attention to what anybody else is doing. I'm just gonna make sure that my tray's okay. That's not really the mission, Jimmy. Like, don't we have a higher calling than that in sterile processing?
Absolutely.
We do. And even if you do the most trays, you do 50 trays a day at your facility. That's 50 out of 420. So 370 of them did it the wrong way. And to your point, it's not just the leaders. It's everybody on the team saying, when I used to go on the floor, I used to say, lights on, and they knew what it meant. And so everybody started really as a mocking me, because I'm a very mockable leader. Like we joke around. The joke can be on me, but the culture was, if you're assembling, you need to have your lighted magnification on. And that's not a humble brag on me. It's really a brag on my team, because I couldn't be out on the floor for 8 hours a day, much less the 24 hours a day that we were processing trays. So it has to be our whole the culture change, and not to sound holy or anything like that, but I'm talking to the people that are listening to your podcast and have this playing in the background. Look around. Is everybody using the material? If Ken went through all the trouble to get insulation testers, and you see somebody with a lap tray, but you see the insulation tester still in the corner, then it's okay to be the one to say, hey, make sure you test that lap tray. And they're going to say, oh, yeah, I was going to test it. I'm just getting it together first. Okay, but just changing that culture, and really in our industry, that kind of thought that productivity does not include inspection. And so if your productivity numbers don't include time for those inspections, you need to go back and look at your productivity numbers and say, let me make sure I build in enough time, because I might be able to assemble a lap tray in 7 minutes, but I can't assemble it and insulation test in 7 minutes. Right. So maybe I need to look at my expectations a different way. And then, like Ken said, sometimes you have ideas. Don't be married to your productivity. If your productivity says X and your team is like, well, you can do it that fast without, inspection testing it, you say, oh, well, let's build in some time to do that, so that everybody understands that quality and efficiency are not, they're not enemies. We can do both of them.
I think it's important to come back to Ken here for a second, because you're onboarding employees actively, right? Like, I know, like, you've hired new technicians here in the recent past, and so like this experience is kind of fresh for you. To even if they have experience, if they are certified, that we still can't assume that they know all of these things we're talking about, the very basics of inspection and functionality and damage. And I'm going to ask a follow-up to the damage piece here in a second. But how do you as a leader, and how would you encourage other leaders and educators to identify those gaps in your new employees? That way you're not just saying, hey, here's all the tools. I know you know how to use them, so go use them. Like, how do you make sure that you find that on the front end?
Well, I mean, it starts for us during the interview process. One of the questions I always ask is, are you going to be willing to do it the Advent Health way, we call it? There's many ways that you can accomplish this task, but we're going to show you the way that we want you to do it. Are you able to conform to that requirement? Of course, the answer is always yes during the interview. We then make sure, and we're still pretty early on this. We have system level educators that kind of rove between our 9-campus system here in Orlando, and then on each campus, or at least on my campus, I have some lead technicians that have an education focus that kind of roll to our educators and to me, and we make sure that they know exactly what we expect these technicians to learn. And part of that is that inspection process and what's expected through that. We also, to point back to your "Am I my brother's keeper?" I mean, that's a big thing. On day one, everybody has equal rights to speak up. we tell the folks that we bring in, and we'll train somebody off the street with no experience at all. We tell them, we're going to teach you something, and you're going to go out on the floor, and the same day that we teach it to you, you're going to notice that things are being done differently. We want you to be comfortable in saying something to the person standing next to you, and ask them, hey, I was showed how to do it this way. Tell me what you're doing. And our tenured folks know that to expect this, and that it's expected that we all treat each other with respect, and that we keep an eye out for each other. I would also just comment on the idea of having those inspections included in your productivity. Absolutely have to be included. My shift supervisors all kind of grimace when I come out and I talk to the team about quality over quantity, and that you'll never be asked to do something in 10 minutes, which should take 20. We're just simply not going to do that, and we're training our ORs to understand that too. If you bring in vendor trays for a case that's in 2 hours, guess what? Your case isn't going to start in 2 hours because we're going to go through and we're going to inspect it just like we would anything else, and get it done correctly for you. So I think it starts at that interview, really, when you're just onboarding from that early on.
I want to go to that to my follow up on the damage piece then, and maybe I'll throw this over to you first, Hamid. It's kind of this cliche. I don't know if it was FBI or CIA, but they say, like, how do they train to identify counterfeit bills? And the story is always, they don't look at counterfeits, they look at the real thing. And if you look at the real thing enough, if you see the counterfeit, then it kind of jumps out at you. I want to ask this about instruments. Is that the model, or is it different in training to identify what needs to be pulled out in this repair scenario? Are we training on, new functional instruments primarily and saying, hey, this is what it looks like, this is how it should work. If you see any variation, any deviation at all, that's what comes out? And or do we see it kind of going the opposite? And I'm not saying one is better than the other necessarily. I kind of want to get y'all's insight, but do we see the opposite in showing all kinds of different instrument damage and say, hey, this is what pitting looks like, this is what chip tips looks like, this is what cracks in your needle holders looks like, and so when you see that, obviously that's a thing. Can you kind of speak to that scenario?
So, first of all, I love that idea, and I had never thought about it that way, but I think it's a bit of a combination of both. You have to expose the team to unacceptable instruments, and while at the same time, hoping that, when you look at your X of percentage of instruments that are damaged, even if either way you train, they're going to mostly be seeing instruments that are not damaged.
Right.
And part of what you want to create is a when in doubt, throw it out situation with the backup, the safety net of having an individual that has more instrument expertise. Because like one of the worst things you could do is have an instrument repair bin and just let that instrument repair bin go to the truck, right? Or go to the company. Because you're going to get some variation of these instruments were fine and these instruments are not even repairable. But you're diminishing the capacity of instruments they can go through. So I always like to have an instrument bin in which one of my more experienced instrument processors, ideally an instrument coordinator. If the budget doesn't give me an instrument coordinator, I steal an instrument coordinator from somebody who's very productive, and I can just steal them off the floor for 4 hours, and then they can be the one that says, we're going to prepare for our repair truck. So that's one of the worst things. The repair truck gets there and they go, oh, let's pull these things off. So that's one. But then this other crime to humanity is when you have a bin full of instruments, that truck has to go through them whether they're good or not. Some of the instruments in there, like stainless steel handled needle holders, they can't be repaired anyway. So those could go right to the doctor's fishing box. And then some of them are fine, but they still have to sort through that box. So it's great to have some kind of internal expert who represents that instrument expertise that can help you clear that. But you want your team members to, when in doubt, hey, When in doubt, throw it out. Because, frankly, the expert is not going to be on every shift. So you might be working on third shift, the weekends, second shift, and you say, I don't know, these jobs don't seem like they align. So if you're in doubt, throw it out. We can deal with getting that set hole, even if you can't find an instrument in the instrument storage, better than we can deal with, to Ken's point, it getting up to the operating room, and they say, because we can work around in the operating room. We don't have an Atson in this set, but we do have a Brown Atson, or we have an Asculap Atson with a big hole. We can work around that, but if I'm assuming that my Atsons are working, I typically, if we're honest, I'm not going to check them. I'm not going to be in the beginning of the case checking them. It's going to be when we get ready to suture and they go, oh, these don't align. So part of having that internal expert and giving your team the freedom to, as Ken said, I would rather them be wrong on an instrument not being functional than be wrong on putting an instrument that's not functional in a tray and sending it up to the operating room.
I think that's a super helpful point, and just like real practical on the, hey, we know that we have limited time to assemble trays, and we should keep in mind that our repair vendor has limited time to repair trays.
Right.
So don't be giving them everything under the sun and let the check happen there, because it's just slowing down that whole quality process. And actually what it does is it degrades your total inventory quality, because you're slowing down this repair technician to just look at things that somebody else could have looked at and then keep that process going. So that's great. Like, I really like that idea. And you also brought up an important point. The repair bin, and we've got another session on that in this conference, but the repair bin is not a place that if you don't know where an instrument goes and you don't know what it is, it doesn't go in the repair bin. There's got to be some other place.
That never happens. That never happens.
I'm calling it as I see it.
I don't know where you made that up out of thin air. Yes.
Yeah.
We got rid of our amnesty table a couple years ago, and now we have like 3 of them. So our repair bin doesn't get them; it's just somewhere else.
I love that. So speaking of repair van and that kind of process, I do want to get some insight, from both you guys, and kind of speak to your experience, but then also your experience of your technicians and how we align these two. Because a big question in this session is, how do we train our technicians to be able to identify where in this spectrum of, brand new instrument, used but still functional, question, and we just kind of went over the question part. It's like, I'm not sure if it's broken or not, but it's still questionable, so let's go ahead and route it this other way. And then clearly in need of repair. And then actually the last one is beyond repair. It's so broke, ain't nobody fixing it. Part of that, I'm not saying that all the education can happen here, but I feel like part of that could come down to what's going on in the repair van. Like, what are their capabilities? Are they in there sprinkling like pixie dust and everything's just kind of regenerating all by itself? Or is there kind of a standard process? So let me start with you, Ken. Have you ever been on a repair van?
Oh, yeah. Our repair van is right outside the door here 4 days a week.
Okay.
And so I go out and see them pretty routinely. And in fact, when I was reviewing the questions that we were going to be addressing for this chat, it occurred to me, I should have my team out on the repair van, because most of them have never been out there to see what's going on. We do tend to err on the side of caution because of the way our contracts with repairs are made, that if there's anything that we question, we value the validation of the guy doing the repairs, where we're not, our expertise, our validation for repairing is a little bit, that's kind of secondary. Sure, we can tell that a 9.5-inch scissor is now 9 inches. So what's going on there? Have we just sharpened it so it's a half-inch short? Most of my team isn't going to know when that end of life occurs, and my repair team will. So it'll go out to the truck. But yeah, again, we get a monthly report which includes all the microscopic pictures and the pitting and all the fun stuff that you don't necessarily see even with a analog magnifier. So that the repair truck's a pretty cool place to hang out. on.
I mean, not in the summer in Florida, probably.
Well, you know what? It has an air conditioner on it. It's pretty comfortable out there. Sometimes it's the only quiet place on campus. It seems like, if they wonder where Ken escaped to, he might be on the repair truck, just hiding.
Okay. Yeah, your secret is out now, Ken.
Yeah, there you go.
In terms of the audience tuning in who's never been on one of those, was there any surprises in there, Ken, that like the normal technician just may not be aware of?
Maybe we have like a grinding wheel that you might see in the garage for sharpening, like a machete or a cutting edge of like a piece of yard equipment. This one's got a little finer grit on it, but I think that to me was a little unusual because I would have thought it would be a little bit too much of a rough instrument. But they're out there, that they have an ultrasonic on the truck where they do a little bit of cleaning after we've already cleaned. I think that would be surprising that they don't just take our word for it. We're kind of the same way. We don't typically take the word of others. We like to redo it to make sure it's done.
Yeah. I like.
But yeah, it's a regular little rolling lab. I mean, it's neat.
It is kind of surprising. I'm going to ask you those same questions, Jimmy. So let's start thinking about your answers. But it's surprising the first time that you see that kind of manual repair equipment, like the grinding wheel that you mentioned, and it really highlights like there's some artistry in this repair. Just like in surgery. And actually, we've got an interview coming out in the next season of Beyond Clean. We're going to talk to a surgeon about the art and science of surgery. It's not like textbook in those surgeries. You guys know, like y'all have been in them, right? There is some skill. There's some art that goes into doing that well. Same thing for instrument repair. Like, not all technicians are created equal. I think everybody knows that. On the repair technician side of things. And a lot of it comes down to like how skillful are you with your hands and how are you able to navigate these manual repair tools and then these very critically important, delicate instrumentation all the way down to like aligning the jaws and everything. I think it's very surprising, on the side of our technicians in SPD who have just maybe never thought about how these things do get fixed in the truck and in the lab. What about you, Jimmy? I'm assuming you've been on a van or two before.
I used to love to go out there. So before Ken just revealed a huge, big secret for new leaders and new managers. The quality of your repair is going to be based on the requirements you put in your contract. So if you don't say how many times a week they're coming, how many trays they're going to do every time, you'll find yourself in a situation where you're getting an average of 7 trays done per week. And obviously that math doesn't work for instrument maintenance. The thing that I was surprised and I love the most, and I think is a reason that even down to every technician, Ken's idea is great. Just take a tour of the truck, is how you store your extra instruments or parts compared to how that truck, everything is in that truck. They can repair all kinds of instruments and it's precisely labeled and grouped in a group. So you see, here's the laparoscopic stuff. Here's all the little stuff that could be broken or needed for laparoscopic instruments, including the insulation replacement and even the little tabs that go there. And you looking up on that little truck, or it's kind of big compared to like a Prius, but not big compared to like a F-150. So you're in that little truck and they have their place so organized, and you're in your space like, we don't have enough stuff. And you start thinking and looking and say, maybe we don't need 47 backup wheat linters. Like maybe we could kind of compartmentalize like they did on a truck, because that's my favorite thing to see, how they have the stuff to repair, because they don't know what instrument they're coming to repair, and they have all the stuff so well organized, and that's something that we could steal from them. I think one of the things that we do, I used to like to do a tour of the IKEA with my team, is, are we using our space wisely on the stuff that frequently gets broken or frequently needs to be replaced, or are we just keeping every instrument that we ever ordered? So that van is a good way for you to think about like 5S'ing and right sizing your backup storage and what stuff they have on that. The stuff they have on that van or truck is probably should be the similar stuff that you have in your backup storage. So it's a good tool in that way.
I think a lot of that comes down to data, and we've had a couple of conferences here in 2022 on the topic of data, but there's a lot more to talk about as it pertains to the backup wall and the inventory, right? Because if you're drilling down deep enough into your instrument inventory data and your usage data and your missing instrument data, like those reports should tell you what are those culprits that are constantly going missing. And then, like you mentioned, if you haven't lost a wheatland or a tractor in the past 5 years, you probably don't need 20 of them on the backup wall. So you can maybe do something, with that organization. But it comes down to data. Like, that's not a decision that you want to kind of say, hey, I feel like this is going to be okay, and then find out the hard way that it's not. Of course, there's always going to be emergent, kind of things that you just have to have a backup just in case. And I'm sure you experienced through the supply chain crises of COVID that you can't always depend on, if I put an order in, it's going to be there next week or in 2 weeks. So there is a little bit of that now we're living through. But I want to transition here kind of on the last part of this interview to talk about some real basic, I guess we'll start with the no-nos of instrument quality inspection. So what are those things? Like, we've mentioned some of them already, but I just kind of want to start laying them out again. Ken, what are the big ones as you're training technicians kind of, fresh off the boat into the department to say, you need to be looking out for X, Y, and Z on these large categories of instruments?
I think bioburden is probably like number one. Any kind of, looking at our forceps and making sure that there's no staining in between the serrations and teeth. That's where they likes to hide. Another thing that we are experiencing here, and I'm not sure if I'm unique. Actually, I'm pretty sure I'm not unique, and that is all the stuff that gets sent back with trays that doesn't belong in trays. Things that are hiding, 5-0 sutures that are wrapped around an instrument at the bottom that you just, it takes a minute to really look to see it. Blades, other things that make it through our decontam areas and onto the assembly table, and yet they still don't get noticed that they're still there. But I think bio is number one, and then I think instruments that have been misshapen or sprung, or scissors that don't cut. I think the other thing, and I was thinking about this as you were discussing, kind of understanding what, the counterfeit, comparing what it should look like versus what the problems are, is, I thought about flexible, endoscopes. You get those brand new, and when you look down them with the borescope, sometimes that working channel, you can see the ribs through. So how do we know what is to spec and what's not when they arrive brand new and they don't look like there may be a defect already?
Huge.
When it's actually just manufactured that way.
Huge point there. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, just knowing what is within the appropriate specs, I think is a big one too. It's a hard one to get around.
And it's an industry-wide need, Ken. Like, I just kind of want to stop a second. I'll throw it over to you too, Jimmy, because I know you've got some opinions on this. But we don't know what new instruments look like or should look like, to your point, at the level of inspection. And this goes back to kind of how we started. We've got all these tools now to do inspection, to drive quality, even deeper, but there is no standard process at scale across the industry that can tell us this is what the inside of a flexible endoscope is supposed to look like direct from the manufacturer. And here's the variations, right? Because it's not cookie cutter. Like, there's design and there's manufacturing. Like, there's going to be differences in every new instrument. But what are those differences? What's in the acceptable range? And then how do we use that as a comparison in inspecting and teaching our technicians? Jameed, have you encountered that problem before? And do you have any insight into how we can start moving the industry toward that direction to get some solutions there?
Of course. And the funniest thing, I always laugh when we are chatting in the hallway or in the break room. When you first get a borescope, your production is going to slow down for 3 months because they're like, oh, we found another defect. And you're like, actually, that's a line. Oh, it's rust inside of here. Actually, that's the shadow of the writing. When you first get a borescope, everything looks terrible. So you have to kind of take that down a notch, and really, my experience in the operating room running the camera during lab cases really helped me guide my team. And it's a constant. Ken said this earlier. We did an in-service on the borescope, we're good the rest of the year. It is a constant thing of saying, here's what it looks like, whether it's the magnified lighting material, whether it's the borescope. But again, not to ride on this horse, function testing will help you with a lot of these no-nos but you can't just say we did function testing in orientation. It has to be constant training to here's some problems that we didn't even think about during your training that's coming up. And for the no-nos, I think one of the big things that I have to say to people in the industry and for people in the industry is we're not instrument repair techs. So I don't want managers out there to come away and saying, hey, we got to start holding these guys responsible. There was a pad that was micromillimeter off on a needle holder. That's unacceptable. No, you got to get the big ones. Like Ken said, sprung retractors, self-retaining retractors that don't hold, obvious bioburden or staining that doesn't erase. And then you can get into some of the advanced stuff, but I don't want to clog my team's mind up to think that they have to be to the quality of those guys who have those years and years of advanced training on the repair truck. It's just certain things that you should be able to prevent all the time. Sprung retractors, sprung forceps, those handheld instruments that won't clamp, scissors that won't cut. Ken's testimony at the beginning of this interview is crucial because in the industry, we probably don't believe what Ken said because we don't do what Ken did. When he said that 9 times out of 10, he brings the synthetic kid skin up and it doesn't cut, then that undermines our thing. Well, it's just surgeons are so picky. Well, if we were doing the function testing every time, then we could say, on that 1 time out of 10, Ken was like, aha, it isn't my team. But the other 9 times out of 10, it's hard to justify. Right. And so if we can focus on function testing, and I don't want people to come away thinking, man, Hank just told me I have to be an instrument repair specialist. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying the basic things that can help you prevent things that are obviously noticeable to the OR staff and the surgeons.
And, I think I completely agree with you, and I think that's a good point. Because I'm a huge fan, like Ken will tell you this too, like we've talked about this at other times. I'm a massive fan of specialization. I want us to stay in our lane, but go very deep in our insight and knowledge. And yeah, our job is not to repair. So if you see like a loose screw on a kerosene or something, don't go grab your screwdriver out of Ken's garage and start tightening that thing. Not your job. That being said, and this is kind of my follow-up, and I want to throw this to you first, Jameed. We're talking about the big no-nos, the basics that every new technician, it should jump out at you. But over time, there is a specialization that can occur. And And we've even got certifications around it now, like, a CIS, a Certified Instrument Specialist, and a CSIS, I think is what it's called, from CBSPD. It really takes you into maybe some of the smaller things, those little nuances that you can only kind of pick up through experience. Can you highlight any of those that maybe like soapboxes, or like little things that you're always looking for when you're looking at specific instruments? Just to throw a few out here, because I want technicians listening especially to be like, okay, I may be certified, I may know all the big no-nos and basics, but there's still a ton of little things out there that you can be thinking about and learning about to make yourself even better.
Okay, so quick story. Hank and I know each other from writing exam questions. That's where we met years and years ago. And so they kept asking me. Hank was like one of the few people that was promoting the Triple Crown and now the Golden Crown. So they kept saying, hey, you should get your CIS so you can write some test questions from CIS. And I was like, listen, I'm a director. I have my CHL. I have a this. I have a that. What do I need? The CIS taught me a bunch of little tips that we weren't doing in my facility. So that CIS is very helpful. Here's the ones right off the bat. If you have cylindrical items like cannulated items, you should roll them on the table and they should roll true. If they veer off, that indicates that it is out of center. That's a tip. Another one is if you have index cards for your kerosene rongeurs, whether you have the fancy take apart or the good old fashioned ones, if you're doing the function testing, during that function testing, you will find bioburden residue if you're doing so the function testing can save you from bioburden, because if you bite on a card, it's going to eject a cardboard or index card material little thing. If there's bioburden in there, you're going to have some bioburden staining, or it will eject the bioburden, and you'll know, even though you don't want to, and it's at the end of the assembly process, you got to send the whole tray back through. But I would rather send that tray back through than go up and explain to a neurosurgeon how the one instrument that has the highest rate of bioburden in neurosurgery, we didn't inspect it. So those are my two little tips that could help you out as a technician. And you don't have to buy index cards. Every one of your PCDs that you run has index cards in it. When I go to a place and they have the index cards in the trash, it makes me go, no. So get those index cards and you can start saving yourself from a bunch of rongeur bioburden incidents.
Yeah.
Scratch paper.
Yeah. Notepads. Yep. I want to say one quick thing about the index card testing, and then Ken, I want to get your little details and nuances here. It's such a fun question. On testing that material, also like with your leather, if you're doing the punching, but keep a special eye out for any residuals from the index card itself, because it's not always a clean cut and there's no paper residue. And the last thing you want to do is have a clean rongeur, do your function test, cuts clean, and then you got some paper residue that's still hanging out there after you release the CHAD. So always watch that. A good practice, if you have air on the clean side, blow it out, just make sure there's no paper or anything, and then you continue on your process. So Ken, what are some other little things that you've seen?
See, I'm glad to hear that you call that a CHAD.
I figured that'd get you.
And you also you took the wind out of my sail. I was going to just mention that the testing process produces waste, right? And so you want to make sure those CHADs don't wind up in the trays.
Yeah, good point.
Because we've seen this before, where we're testing all this stuff and we're creating these little pieces of residual that wind up falling in your tray and you don't know about it. I think probably one of the other things that has kind of come to light for me recently is just when you're doing a tray, look at the whole tray, making sure that you've probably stored your container portion or the casket, whatever you call it, in your facility, over on a shelf. Make sure those haven't gotten dusty or gotten anything in it. Make sure that before you put that lid on, you haven't shed a hair or something that has fallen in, because these kind of things will get you every time. and I don't care as long as humans are doing this. Those sort of things are going to be pitfalls for us, and you really have to do that one last cursory inspection over the entire tray to make sure nothing that doesn't belong in there is still in, is in there. And watch out for those hanging chads. They'll get you.
Yeah. So this is going to be shocking, guys. There's folks working in our departments today who were not alive when the hanging chad scenario happened. Okay, so let's just date ourselves here.
They're like,
that's right. Go to Google, and you'll figure it out, all you young folks. Okay. As we wrap up here, I want to throw out one small thing myself. There's a million that we could list, but it goes back to the insulation testing. And I want to challenge folks out there. Yes, you need to be testing those shafts. You also need to be testing insulated handles. So make sure that whatever insulating test you got allows you to test the handle as well. That's my little bitty takeaway to challenge folks. So I want to wrap, guys, with encouragement, question, challenges. Just throw them out to the industry today, because we've picked up a very important one that I want all these innovators, software designers, everything to be listening here. Hey, it's still too difficult today to quickly, effectively, easily document our testing in these areas. We've already kind of said it. You can put a checklist on the thing, but like Ken said, you can check it and it's not really done. How do we interface that accountability piece and just the ease in processing piece? So that's a challenge I want people to kind of take away and do. And you guys, maybe I'll start with Jameed first. Is there anything you want to throw out in this repair conversation that you feel like still needs to be solved? Someone still needs to figure out a way, if it's on the innovation side, if it's in the clinical side, in the guidelines, anything at all, and then we'll kind of wrap from there.
So two things. I know a lot of times we are nervous and averse to taking our team to the OR. We're asking for formal permission. We have a permission slip. Meanwhile, Ken can tell you, there's 11 people in the OR that we didn't know about. We turn around, we go, who's that? Oh, this is one of our transfusion team members training. We got a high school program. And so it's your stuff. Just go in there, take your new staff in there, and they're going to say, hey, Hank, hey, Ken, what are you doing up here? Oh, we're just QAing our policy. We just want to see our instruments, how we package them and open them. You don't need a permission slip from the head of surgery or from the CNOR. It's your stuff. Don't be afraid. And when they get used to you doing it, then it'll be easier to get in there. The second thing is, my tip is, take control of your instrument repair program. Don't let the repair vendor say, oh, we need to get these or those. There are certain instruments that are the whole surgery is done under magnification. Neurosurgery, cardiac surgery, ENT surgery, the eye surgery, the whole surgery is done. So if we're not using our magnified lighting implements at the table side, they're seeing a whole different picture. And so my team used to say, man, why do those cardiac surgeons complain so much? And it's because the whole case they have on either loops are using some type of magnification to see this field, and they're seeing those instruments in a different way than we're seeing them. So that kind of goes with both of them. Once they go up and see that the whole case is under magnification, they can say, no wonder they're picky, but also that's the encouragement. That's why we need to look at the instruments under magnification when we're processing.
Love that. What about you, Ken?
Just such a great point. I just had that conversation with my team the other day about, but the scissor that we replaced it with was only a millimeter difference. And I'm like, well, they're under magnification. For them, this is a big difference. I think technology is at a place now where we need more of these devices where you can plug a scope in and run light through it and be able to tell whether there's an issue with the rods inside the scope and whether the color quality is not appropriate. So much of that stuff is going to be very subjective for a technician to determine whether or not this picture is what it should be. Even to be able to use like digitizers where an instrument is viewed under an electronic eye, if you will, and it can pick out non-conforming defects either in the length of it or the shape or even symmetry, to take some of the subjectivity that a human might use and just compare it to what a standard should be. We're at a point now where this stuff, I mean, you can buy it for your video games at home. And I'm not a gamer, but when I see these things advertised on TV, I'm like, hey, we use that in the art.
Yeah, we could use that.
Now you can buy it for the house. So, I know you can put this array above your technician in the assembly area and have your instruments checked out to see, if they meet specifications. So, more tech and the budgets to do that kind of stuff. Not sure how I feel about robots wrapping trays yet, but definitely some of this other stuff.
That's another panel discussion. We'll get you back for round two there, Ken. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your commitment to the industry. And in particular, this topic, the repair topic is not going away anytime soon. As long as we continue reusing instruments, we're going to continue having this conversation. So I hope folks really found all these tips and tricks helpful. And again, thank you for sharing a couple moments of your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Hank. Great to meet you guys.
And we'll turn it back over to our host.